Well, hello there and welcome to the channel, and in this video I'm going to be talking to you about which plants you should never consider cutting, pruning, trimming in the month of July. Now I know that's a bit childish, but I'm trying to make an emotional point. The problem is, if you start cutting these plants, we'll be discussing them very shortly, then you could impact these in certain ways. Firstly, you could be ending any chance of a flowering display this year. You could be ending any chance of a flowering display next year in the spring, which is desperately sad. And thirdly, you could be causing certain trees to weep sap so heavily that you will weaken these plants and again impact on next year's display. So what we're going to try and do is avoid having any of these mistakes being made in your own garden. I don't blame people for their mistakes, but I do ask they pay for them. Now that we are into July, the weather is usually really quite good, at least for people, that is. However, the plants can be subjected to heat stress and water stress depending on what the weather's like, and this year we are having an extended period of drought. We have had temperatures going into their 30s, so it's been lovely for us, but the plants, not so much. So the last thing I want to do is add another layer of stress to these plants by chopping them about during hot, dry weather. So always water your plants prior to cutting, and try and choose a cooler, cloudier day. It's just going to be for the best. So now we've got that out of the way, let's go on with the plants. The first plant I'm going to talk about is I think that's the power trying to come back on. The first plant I'm going to talk about is the Catinus cocagria, and the various cultivars, of which there are some amazing ones. Commonly known as the smoke bush, smoke tree, it has these really lovely characteristic blooms that looks like a cloud of smoke, hence the name. And if you're trying to create that show, you've got to be very, very careful with your pruning. To be honest with you, don't prune it. It produces this bloom on the previous season's wood, and you'll get that display May to beginning of July. So it's not surprising that one would think to cut immediately after flowering. That way you will produce more invigorated growth this year, which will then make next year's old season's wood, and you'll get the blooms on that. But it is a very, very sensitive, touchy plant. It just doesn't like being messed about with. Yes, you could cut it now, but really ever so gently, and if you start cutting it back to any sort of depth, then you can put that plant into shock. You won't get an awful lot of growth this year, and you can again impact on the flowering next year. So when do you cut these? Typically, especially on the larger leaved cultivars like Grace, you would do that late winter, early spring, when the plant is fully dormant. And making a cut at that time of year actually increases the leaf size. It's a really, really good way of improving a color display or the foliage display of these plants. But if you're talking about the flowering display, which on a really good specimen is quite outstanding, very, very unusual, you just don't see other plants doing this, then either just never cut it, that will be your best policy, just don't cut it ever, but I understand these plants will get too big, or just give it a light cut in the summer after it's finished flowering. It's a tricky one there. Sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and accept that weird flowering phenomenon. You're gonna have to miss out on it over a year or so, but it's a tricky one, Catinus. If you've got any better advice on that, because I've yet to find anyone come up with a decent strategy, then let us know in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Cotinus, it's a bit of a problem child, and now it started raining. Bloody England. Oh, hold on a minute. If you're finding this video useful or even just mildly amusing, then don't forget to click the thumbs up, press on that subscription, and if you want to be notified of whenever we release a new video, then click on that notification bell. It helps us more than you know, and it allows us to do stupid visits like this in the future. Anyway, let's continue to find out what old boiled butt has to say. Put my bloody glasses back on. Too hot, too sunny. It's too lovely. Ooh. This next group of plants, do you know what? I'm holding a metal rod with a camera on it in a storm. It's not very clever, is it? Anyway, this second group of plants are your late flowering hydrangeas, and this is going to highlight the importance of keeping the names on your plants so you know exactly what you have. We're talking about the species Paniculata, arborescens, and quercifolia, all of which will flower on the previous season's wood and flower on the apical tip. So if you cut these now, then you'll be removing the growth that would house the blooms, so you're removing effectively your display, which will be late summer, early autumn. So if you're not sure which particular species of your hydrangea are that you are cutting, well, to be honest with you, all your other species and cultivars are probably in flower now, so that's fine. If they're not in flower yet, it's probably those. Don't cut them. Don't think that they're not flowering and you've missed out. It's probably one of those later flowering ones. Leave them alone. Hopefully you will get that display. And then we'll talk about when to prune back your hydrangeas later on in the year. Death wish me. Let's take a quick break, shall we? I think that's over, at least for now. The next plants I'm going to talk to you about are your Daphnes, which are really popular late winter, very early spring flowering shrubs. Now, extremely highly scented plants, so it's a really valuable plant to have in the garden. In fact, there is a hybrid in this genus which is reputed to be the world's most fragrant plant, and that is Daphne fragrant princess. You can smell that a mile away. Anyway, if you are going to cut it, you would only do that immediately after flowering, and only ever so lightly. They won't take any kind of hard cutting back, because that can cause dieback. Again, another one of these very sensitive plants. Better off not touching it at all. And of course, if it's going to be flowering at the end of the winter, then it's flowering on last year's wood. So if you cut these plants now, let's be honest with you, these are not cheap plants and they're not particularly fast growing. So you really don't want to mess about with them. If you cut them now, because they can look straggly this time of year, you're going to be removing all that growth that will provide you with this coming season's late winter flower. So don't do it, and if you can avoid it, probably best not to ever cut it. But I do understand after about 10-15 years they can be a bit big, straggly, and will need to be, well, dug up, thrown away, buy yourself a new one. Now, we have covered these plants many times before, but it's always worth mentioning just in case you haven't seen these videos before. So we're talking about now your camellias, your rhododendrons, and your azaleas, all of which are late winter, early spring to mid-spring flowering plants. I mean, it's a big range, a lot of hybrids. They'll be flowering over a long period independently. And once they finish flowering, you tend to get a lot of invigorated growth. But the problem is, as soon as they finish flowering, that new growth is going to have the flower bud very, very tiny at the apical tip. And if you cut off any of the growth from that point onwards, you're removing next year's flowering display. But I can understand why you'd want to cut it, because this invigorated growth can look quite messy. Let me show you. As you can see, are no blooms anymore. Blooming has finished, and what the plant has done now is produce a load of extending invigorated growth, which last year we decided we'd train along here to try and keep it at least tidy to a certain extent. But if you look a bit closer, this apical tip here, this will be home to a bloom as well as a future growing point. So wherever you start cutting these, you're removing this point, and by doing so you're removing next spring's growth. So don't do it. Refrain from cutting these any time after the end or just before the end of the flowering season. You've got to be brave to do as you're told. So this is a forsythia. As you can see, this thick woody growth here, that is last year's growth. This growth here, this is this year's new growth. And for next year, because these are early spring flowering, your new blooms will be produced on this growth. So if you cut any of this back, you're going to lose next year's blooms. It flowers again on previous season's wood, so you cut it this time of year, you're removing part of next year's display. And it's not just these gorgeous forsythias with their lovely spring golden, because they will flower top to bottom, absolutely superb. It will be ryebees, your flowering currant. It's exactly the same thing. You've got your old growth here, which it's flowered on, and then this new growth, that is where your blooms are going to occur next year. So ryebees, forsythia, exactly the same. It's way too late to cut these. All you would do is reduce next year's flowering display. If you have a wall or a pagoda or a structure in your garden and you want to grow a rose up it, you'll go to your garden centre and you'll have two groups to choose from. You are going to have your climbing roses, which you might think, that makes sense. Or you'll have your rambling roses, which are the right decision. And you won't know which one is which. But if you've chosen the rambler roses and it's finished flowering, don't cut these. Don't cut these. Now, your rambling roses, like the other plants we've discussed, they flower on the previous season's wood. So you would only ever cut them and prune them lightly once they have finished flowering. You start doing proper chops in them, you won't get any blooms for next year. And I do understand that some of these plants can get absolutely enormous, but then that is down to you to research the plant you've purchased and make sure that it hasn't got some ridiculous height like 30 feet that is actually going to smother everything, get so big that whatever it's hanging on is just going to pull it down. And I've seen that happen so many times before. So climbing roses, that is a different kettle of fish. You'll be cutting those back November, possibly a bit of remedial work in the spring. If you cut them in the summer, no one would care. I don't care. I don't like them anyway. But with rambling roses, and there are some absolutely stunning plants in there, you'd never cut them now. You would only give them a light trim. You don't start playing about with the branch work, because the branch work itself has some fantastic ornamental value. So rambling roses, leave them alone. Climbers, do what you want, I don't care. No, I'm allowed to have my own opinion. This is England. We have free speech here, apparently. Anyway, a few more to add to your list. Yucca trees. Now, you've probably bought the wrong yucca. It's getting big. It's looking an absolute mess. If you want it to have those amazing candelabra of white blooms, don't cut them. If you start cutting them, it stresses them. It will put flowering back a year, possibly 2 years. So be very, very careful when it comes to cutting those. To be fair, where I've chopped back quite hard, some big old specimens, they bounce back and flowered anyway. But that is what the prevailing gardening knowledge tends to say. Just be a bit careful with cutting with those. Syringas, that's another one that already has next year's flower bud on it. So if you start cutting those back now, you're removing next year's flowering display. And Philadelphus, the amount of times I appreciate it is a very, very straggly, messy looking plant, and the temptation to cut them probably 2-3 times a year is very difficult to try and just put to the back of your head. But avoid it. Avoid doing it if you want to cut it immediately after flowering. They have probably all finished flowering now. They probably look an absolute state. But if you start cutting any of that new growth that comes through, no flowers for you next year. They're really funny about it. They just won't. You cut it, they say no blooms at all. And there you have it. Those are all my plants. It should never be cutting in July. Just don't do it. Try and avoid doing it. Always make sure you know the names of your plants. If you don't have to remember them, just leave a label on them so that you can always refer to it later on, just to make sure that you know what you're doing. But if you've got any, oh my God, forgot about the trees. Come on in, let's go for a little walk over here. This is a birch. This is Jack Montii. I believe it is a cultivar called Eskimo. You never cut birches in the summer. They are heavy weeders of sap, and you can severely damage this plant, weaken them, and they will just struggle for the following year. And if you do cut them, you always cut to a fault. Don't start doing a nice nice chamfered prune on the top, because you're going to get invigorated branches. You can actually destroy the ornamental branch work of the year. So firstly, never cut in the summer, only ever cut late winter, early spring, when this plant is fully dormant. When you do cut it, always cut to a fault to try and maintain the ornamental branch work. Just do it properly. It is the same issue with your acers. Now that could be like your North American acers, or your maples, your pseudoplatanus, platanus, and it's also your Japanese acers. Again, all of these are heavy bleeders of sap. Now I know some of you will say, oh, but I can make a really lovely shape each year of my acer if I just prune it lightly on the top. I know no one really speaks like that. And if that's what you want to do, and do it every flipping year, maybe twice a year, well, that's down to you if you want to do all that work. But believe me, you're ruining the natural habit of these plants, and there is no way on earth that you are going to mimic a stunning natural acer by giving it a haircut year on year. Just well, if you like it, that's fine, you keep on doing it, but for me, that's a no-no. And did I mention walnuts? Again, walnuts, heavy weepers of sap. Now that is everything I'm going to mention today. There are some issues with quercus, which are your oaks, especially in North America, because if you cut in the summer, and we will do cuts in the summer here in the UK for remedial work on ancient trees, but you can have issues with oak blight, which is a fungal infection that is prone around this time of year. It's a bit like our stone fruit trees, where you can't cut them in the winter period or damp periods because there's a prevalence of silver leaf and bacterial cankers. So there's certain timings for certain diseases in certain countries. So depending where you are watching this, because this is all based in England, it's all the knowledge that we've built up for the last 200 years in our study of scientific horticulture. It's not about other countries, but hopefully most of this information is going to be standard wherever you are. But if there are any other plants that you should be never cutting now, put it in the comments. It is there for you to pass that information on to the other viewers. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully you found it useful, and hopefully we will see you in the next video. Goodbye. Right, now, just before you go, if you want to see more content, more behind the scenes stuff, and images that I've taken of some weird freaky plants over the years, then you're in luck, because we've created an Instagram page. So you can find the link in our description. You can find the link on our main page, and if I'm clever enough, I might be able to get a link somewhere up there. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you want to see more YouTube stuff, then check out this video here. That's quite a good one. And if it doesn't float your boat, then another one right there. And enjoy these while I still got the strength, imagination and aptitude to make them. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.